Welcome, everyone. We're glad to see you, and glad that you could join us for our first Compassionate Houston Week event. This is the first year that officially Houston is celebrating the art and goodness of compassion. And we hope very much that this is an event which will be gathering steam and become more and more well-known and really become part of Houston life. The city council, city office has declared it Houston Week, so we're Compassion Week, so we're official. And where's Betty Adam? Betty Adam has been instrumental in creating this, and she's about to walk in. She's been there. She's still out there talking to Steve, okay. So for us, in so many ways, compassion is really a central value. It's more than a value, it's really a compass by which we can guide and enrich our lives, and by which we can really contribute to, as we enrich our own lives with compassion, that includes kindness towards ourselves. We very naturally enrich the environment for the people around us, our family, people in our workplace, wider and wider circles of the city. And compassion, as I think is compellingly obvious, is crucial, really, for global survival, for the world repairing itself, because it's being torn apart at an accelerated rate, unprecedented in human history. And we need a lot of repairing mechanisms, repairing our internal wounds, repairing relationships with the people around us, and repairing global relationships. It's crucial. So there could be nothing more important than to focus on the need for, and not just the need, but the possibility for compassion, and the power it has to open up our lives, soften our hearts. But the interesting thing with compassion, it softens and strengthens at the same time. It's not a weak-hearted thing. It's courageous, actually. Thupten Jinpa, the translator of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, has just come out with a book talking about the courage of having heartfelt compassion, because compassion is about, I'm ready to help. I'm ready to help. I'm ready to do what is needed to help myself, which is where many of us fall short. I'm ready to help someone else. So that's a statement of strength and ability. So for us here, we always actually frame everything that we do with some moments at least of considering the compassionate wish that everyone be free of suffering, and its spiritual heartmate, the loving wish that everyone have happiness and the causes of happiness. So the wish for happiness for ourselves and others, the wish to be free of suffering for ourselves and others, these are what we understand as love and compassion. And so we usually begin by singing and reminding ourselves and just getting in a different, more relaxed frame of mind when we start. Would you start us with that, please? And the words are on your yellow sheet. No, just the, but the Shantideva verse too, please.
That two aspiration verses?
Yeah.
We'll read the two aspiration verses on the yellow sheet. May all
beings always have happiness and its causes. May all beings always be free of pain and its causes. For as long as space abides, as long as the world remains, just so long may I be there, resolving all beings minimize pain. And letting that intention just flow through you, we'll begin with just a little bit of quiet sitting with some guidance to your sitting as well, just to take a moment to really relax. Whatever you've been doing today, let it go. There's nothing more to do about it right at this moment. Let it go. Let yourself just be here. Just here. Alive in this present moment. A one-of-a-kind, exquisite moment of your life. And let the moment just kiss you. Just be here. That's all. And you can feel the chair or cushion beneath you, and what do you feel? You feel its support. It's holding you. We all like to be held and supported. So it's happening right now, and you can just sense into that contact you can directly experience right now. And it is occurring right now. Miracle. You're here in the present moment. And let your body relax as much as it would like to do. You are held, you are supported, so you can let go of a certain kind of strain. Let your hands be at ease, your shoulders. Your neck is long, your chin tucked in just a little bit because that pulls up the central corridor of your body, your spine, and that gives you another kind of support that you can find as support for your relaxation. Your body relaxes, your heart relaxes, and a relaxed heart is a beginning of compassion for yourself, for others. So just be with your own breathing for a moment. You are breathing, everyone is breathing just naturally. There's nothing to do in any of this. Just notice that you are breathing. This too is occurring right now in the present moment. You can feel that breath coming in. Just the right moment. You relax and let your breath release. It's the rhythm of our lives. Paying attention in this way is itself a form of self-care. It's one form. In order to have compassion, you need attention. So right now you're paying attention to your own experience as a breathing organism, which is what we all are, living, breathing. And what a living, breathing organism wants most of all is to continue to live and breathe freely, easily, without pain, with support. If you pay attention to your own experience of breathing, it's very easy to see how profoundly significant it is to you to breathe. If anything begins to interrupt your breath for even a moment, swallow something the wrong way, air fills with smoke somewhere, you cough. For some reason, you have to hold your breath. It's very disturbing. So we're here and gratefully breathing easily in and out. We want it to continue that way. And there's a certain power in that recognition that we want it to continue this way, that we want to continue at ease, without pain, without disturbance. It's profoundly true. And when we really recognize how true this is about ourselves, how much you want your next breath to come in just right. We don't usually think about it because it's automatic. But if there were to be any obstacle to its inflow, oh, that would be frightening, devastating. So this precious, precious breathing process, as you pay attention to how precious it is to you, in the very same time you learn exactly how precious it is to every other person here breathing with you. And recognizing that there is this profound similarity in all of us. We want to continue to breathe and to breathe well and easily and live well and happily. We consciously pay attention to this profound similarity in all of us. Begin to feel closer. And feeling closer, it becomes easier to really wish others well. Until in time this can become the very core of our being and our inflow and outflow of our breath. So filled now with the recognition how precious your own breathing is, and through that knowing how precious the breathing of each person here is to them. You try something. On your exhale, your next exhale, whenever it comes, feel that along with exhaling your old breath, you're actually sending. You're sending good wishes, even light carrying your good wishes for happiness to a person within your line of sight in the room, maybe somebody sitting in front of you or to the side. Just feel how that is. Feel that you're sending it. And when you inhale, you can feel that whatever obstructs this person from having the happiness that you wish for them, that you inhale that away from them and free them from it. You do this with ease, relaxed way, just with this gentle aspiration accompanying your breathing. We'll do that for a few cycles of breath. So you're exhaling good wishes, perhaps as light for this person, and inhaling away anything that obstructs their happiness. You don't have to know what it is, you're just removing it. And what is your experience as you are doing this? Do you feel more or less relaxed? Do you feel more or less significant? Do you feel more or less connected to the people, world around you? And then with our last few breaths, you can feel that just as light and consciousness can really expand infinitely, that you are exhaling these good wishes to everyone in the room, whether you can see them directly or not. But that's your intention. And you're inhaling away any difficulties that they may have. And they're becoming more and more shining, luminous. And maybe you are too, because everyone is also sending this to you. And take another moment to notice how you are, how you feel. How did this affect you? We'll ask you in a little bit how it affected you. So one of the things about compassion, love and compassion, is that it really sings best from a relaxed heart. Being relaxed, being serene is a part of cultivating compassion. Research has shown, people are researching compassion now, many different perspectives, that people who are very, very emotive and emotional, and in a way that they don't exactly manage, they kind of just erupt with emotion, are actually less effective, likely to be actively, compassionately engaged in an effective way than people who are kind of, more serene and just open. Because these other people, and we've all been them and we've all seen them, right, are so busy managing their own emotions and excitement around someone's pain that they're not able to be there for the other person. So that's interesting. So that means that the self-care of just allowing yourself some space, as we did just for a minute or two, but even that is more than many do on a regular basis, is already opening up a space for compassion? Because, as I mentioned, as we were doing the practice, is a practice called giving and taking. It's very, very central to the Indian and Tibetan Buddhist traditions, and actually we're going to expand on it quite a bit this summer. It's very beautiful practice. All has to do with breathing, which is something completely natural to us. So when we do this, as we were preparing to do the actual giving and taking, we took a few moments to just quiet down, let go of our worries of the past and concerns about the future, and just be here with ourselves. And that cultivation of that kind of attention to the present is a profound way, actually, of taking care of ourselves. Compassion is vital for our survival. Actually, the fact that we are alive today is because someone, probably many people, took care of us when we could do nothing for ourselves. They may not have been perfect in every way, but somebody was around to feed us and hold us and clean us and teach us to talk and teach us to walk. That's kindness. That's why we're effectively alive. Compassion is also very significant for our physical well-being. A lot of research has been done on this also, and maybe you're familiar with it. But the cultivation of compassion, which is often conjoined with some cultivation of mindfulness, is a measurable reducer of stress in the body. And it particularly lengthens the life of telomeres, which are important. They're like the tips of the chromosomes, and it's actually a very significant factor in predicting longevity and long-term health. And it has been discovered that the cultivation of compassion helps these telomeres stay for a longer period of time. It reduces stress in the body, and it turns out that stress is also a very, very significant indicator for health and longevity. So being calm and cultivating compassion is good for you at the physiological level. That's quite important. It's also clearly good at the social level, building trust among people, being able to really sense what other people are feeling, which is profoundly related to our ability to sense what we are feeling. And a lot of people don't have any idea. Many of us, maybe even most of us, most of the time don't really know what we're feeling. We're so busy. We're so engaged. And so touching in, that's why I took this moment to recognize how precious breath is for you. Just so is it precious for everyone. In other words, the more we can realize how painful pain is for us, that's our pathway to recognizing exactly how painful it is for others. And that's what makes it possible to have compassion, because other people are suffering, and we know what suffering is like. There has to be that very personal connection. Suffering is not an abstraction. Pain is not an abstraction. Buddhist tradition likes to emphasize the pain. You know, you read about in textbooks, pain, there's this happening in the brain, or there's that happening, and okay, it sounds like some kind of abstract thing that is not, though. Pain, whenever there is suffering, there is a person, a being, a human or an animal who's feeling pain. And to the extent that we know what that is like, how could we help but have compassion? So one of the So compassion is good for the body. It's good for, goes hand in hand really, it's good for surviving in the world where a lot of pain exists. Because it turns out, and this might be a little counterintuitive, Richie Davidson has spoken a lot about this in talks that he gives. People who cultivate compassion, they do experiments. People cultivate compassion and they watch movies where terrible things are happening, and they measure their reactivity in various ways. And what they find is that people who have trained in compassion, and they also train in mindfulness, these are somewhat overlapping in this effect that I'm going to describe. What happens is that they react much more powerfully to the moment when, the guy is holding a gun at someone else. They react more powerfully than other people, but they also recover more quickly. So that's very, very interesting. The heart is open, they're feeling, they're not insensitive to the pain, but they don't go into some deep cycle of depression and worry and hurt and so forth. They come back, and it's in that coming back that becomes possible to help another person. So 3 points about the process of cultivating compassion. It's important when you hear about some suffering or somebody reports it to you, to immediately go for, what would it be like if I were experiencing that? What would that be like? Then it becomes quite automatic that you develop compassion. I mean, if we think about, we hear all the time about terrible, bombings, drownings, ferries going under, trying to reach Europe from Africa, thousands of people dying. What would that be like if we were on that boat? There's, to imagine that this is something that could happen to us and how that would feel is a way of making a connection. It's a way of making a connection. And another thing that's important in the cultivation of compassion is getting over this sense that I'm really different from everybody else, or that my kind of person is different from everybody else. And because that becomes a barrier. And studies have been done. If somebody is out lying, apparently having collapsed in the middle of the street, wearing a T-shirt of the hometown team, people come around and help, But if they're dressed badly in rags, and drooling a little bit, and they're collapsed on the subway steps leading to the subway, I think this was a study in London, and people just politely walk by. You don't feel connection. So the cultivation of compassion will involve some sense of cultivating a sense of connection with others, which is not hard if we think about it. Every beating heart is in a body that has bones that will break, that has flesh that will crack open and bleed. No matter what kind of skin you're wrapped in, or what color the skin is, or whether you're wearing Pucci, is that right? some great Italian designer, or you're wearing hand-me-downs. These things which tend to be so significant often in how we regard others, as how we regard others, they mean nothing. They mean nothing. If a bomb goes, if your house is burning down, it's terrible. It doesn't matter how old you are, how rich you are, what color you are, nothing, how educated you are, none of that matters. At a very human level, I think we know this. And it's important to bring this to the fore sometimes as we consider how we want to be in the world. What could be better than serving the world and relieving some of the suffering of the world, as we sang in this famous verse that we sang earlier. You know, it would be great if, as long as the world exists, if I could continue to be helpful and do something, because it's really kind of unbearable to think of all the suffering that there is. I can't take care of all of it for sure, but we could all do something. And what would make a life, your life, my life, more meaningful than offering some benefit as we are able to contribute to the world? Meaning is there, power is there, really a gift of grace and feeling fully embodied in life to do something that has real significance. It's a tremendous gift to give yourself, tremendous gift to give others. So I'll stop there. Harvey will continue.
So good evening, everyone. It's a big topic. We're talking about compassion for others, compassion for self. It occurs to me to say that, I think if we really think of Buddhist practice carefully, there are many, many practices. Buddhism is concerned with liberation from a cycle of rebirth, or liberation from patterns of repetitive patterns of kind of obsessive, restrained, habitual patterns. And really a lot of practices, if we think about them carefully, are really using a compassion as a path to full and utter liberation. And part of that compassion really has to do with what Anne was talking about, and that is the ability to understand our own experience. It's not only that we are feeling compassion and feeling our own pain. It is the case with a great deal of understanding, and it's not just a little bit of understanding, but with a great deal of understanding, there can be a kind of understanding, a deeper understanding of the nature of our own and others' pain, where we might have a kind of large spaciousness that contains and feels free, even though there is a great deal of pain and suffering and misery in the field. I mean, a very, very famous Buddhist image is that of a lotus which grows in a field of mud but is actually unstained by difficulty and muddiness. And it's not that in Buddhism we just look at suffering and go yum, 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 yum. It's that suffering is actually, in a way, a path. And it's a path that can lead to freedom and freeingness. And but it does involve, actually, for us, especially in the West, coming to grips with the fact that most of us don't really like to be in touch with our experience. And so part of spiritual practice actually has to do with coming into some more deeper contact with our actual experience. And that's a little bit easier to say than to do, but I thought I would share some information about this in a very kind of, this is cliff notes upon cliff notes of what might be of some assistance to people in terms of the idea of self-compassion and also other compassion, compassion for self and others. And this is inspired by Buddhism, but it's also informed by some modern psychotherapeutic understandings. The two texts that I'm drawing from, I'm really drawing mostly from Kristen Neff's book. She's down the road at Austin. Self-Compassion, good read. Also a very wonderful movie about her and her family. It's called Horseboy, where she and her partner and her autistic son go off to Mongolia to heal the son of autism. It's a very interesting movie. So I could recommend that to you if you're interested in self-compassion. And The Mindful Path to Self-Compassion by Christopher Germer. These are both very accessible books. And of course, we have the Compassion Project with Betty Adams sitting in the back, who's the dean of the Compassion Project in Houston, Texas. And if you have any questions about dealing with compassion, touch her toes and talk with her. She is our queen. So just to share a little bit, really, really short, Kristen Neff says that for self-compassion, 3 things are required: self-kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness. Self-kindness, common humanity, mindfulness. And in many ways, Anne already mentioned these, but she just didn't make a list out of them. I work a lot with couples, and nowadays I'm working better and better with couples. And that's not just to be proud, it's really that there's some things that can be very, very helpful with couples. The style of therapy that I do is informed by a woman named Sue Johnson. It's called emotionally focused therapy. So basically, we're all blessed with a part of our brain called the amygdala. It's a little kind of, some people say chestnut, some people say almond-sized piece of the brain, which within 25 milliseconds, its job description is to decide whether something is dangerous or not. So it's not at all accurate, but it is very fast. And, you know, if you're living in the jungle, you want to be fast over accurate. But what occurs in our relationships is that, especially if we've had any trauma, which includes all of us, in our lives, and that can mean the traumas of neglect, it can be the traumas of abuse, illness, parents who died, whatever. Most of us in the West have hyperactive amygdalas, and maybe they work even faster than 25 milliseconds, but really, we're all in some kind of relationships, whether we're in love relationships or with our parents, with our animals. And it's kind of easy. We see something, and within 25 milliseconds, if we're misinterpreting something or if we're getting frightened, and it might be an accurate fright, we're going to do one of 3 basic things. We fight, we flee, or we freeze. And you probably know people who are fighters, you probably know people who are fleers, and you probably know people who are freezers, and you can pretty much have a good idea who you are. And some people oscillate, some people, there's a pattern of, we often find this with the engineering guys, they're sort of fleer, but if they flee enough, maybe every 3 years, they fight. You know, sometimes we'll call it a slow burn, and, you know, the gunpowder's really dry, and all of a sudden, actually, my father was kind of like this. Every 10 years, I'd be in my room and I'd actually hear him jumping up and down in the kitchen, screaming at my mother. I mean, it's pretty calm and cool for 10 years. But then literally he'd be jumping up and down in the kitchen and screaming. And that's not uncommon. That's one kind of model. So those are our reactions when we get frightened. What Sue Johnson in emotionally focused therapy contributes is that if we can really look at what is frightening us, and often we can't do this in the thick of a fight or in the thick of a withdrawal or in the thick of a freeze, but at least afterwards, if we can actually honestly look at what the heck just happened? You know, why did I bark at my wife? Why did I sort of shut down? So for me, one of the easiest things is I got a bugaboo about people coming late. So if I wasn't informed by therapy, and let's say we had an appointment, it's supposed to be 1 o'clock, and if I was younger, especially because somehow with age I've grown mellower, and if you said, you know, you're going to be here at 1 o'clock, you know, at 1:02, if you're not here, like, I would really be pissed off. And that's a lot of us. And it can be anything. I mean, maybe you don't do the dishes right, or you didn't do the shopping right, or you get the whole milk instead of the skim milk. Toilet paper this way versus that way. Toilet seat up or versus down, or the cap on the toothpaste off or on. We've all got our things, and especially in long-term relationships. And so that happens, and uninformed by therapy, most of us just start taking the moral inventory of the person who's coming at 103. You are so unreliable. I can never depend on you. I thought I couldn't depend on you, and now I realize I could never depend on you. You're just, a liar. And, if I really get warmed up, there can be a whole stream of expletives. And then unto 7 generations, the mother and the father, you take after them, and I should have known. And then whatever comes back, it's just a big old cycle. Or I could freeze and, just person comes and it's like, and, they're trying to talk and, just. Or I could just leave. I'm not talking to you for 2 days. And all of these things happen. We've seen this all. I mean, I'm not describing anything that's, a different species. This is us and or our families. But what if I should actually be able to touch into not their moral inventory, but what's really going on inside of me? And it's actually kind of simple. Usually I'm feeling unseen, I'm feeling unappreciated, I'm feeling hurt, I'm feeling vulnerable. And if all else fails and you can't even really think this way, just land on the question, am I feeling loved or unloved? When you come at 102 and I said it was 1, I feel tremendously unloved. And it's very, very hard to do this because people don't want to go into their own stuff and what we call in my business, own their emotions. But if I can do this and I realize you're coming at 102 and I start marinating in what I'm actually feeling, it's like I feel invisible, I don't matter, I feel unloved. Now, if I can tolerate that, which is where mindfulness comes in, and also self-kindness, can I have the self-kindness and the mindfulness to hold this painful sense of being unloved? And most of us find that pretty difficult. Even if it's afterwards. Because I don't assume most people can do this in the thick of it. Because what happens is once your amygdala starts firing, you go into what's called the reptilian brain. And once you're in your reptilian brain, you become a reptile. And none of us, we all know what it's like to be a reptile. We've been there. Yeah, we use 4-letter words, 3-letter words. It's not pretty. We scream. I'm a big screamer. I know what it's like to be a reptile. So if we can calm down from being a reptile and we can ultimately say, gosh, we agreed you were going to be here at 1. You came at 103. And I just have to let you know, the way I'm wired, I just felt utterly unloved. And when I feel unloved, I just go ballistic. But I felt unloved. Then the things, if the person's not coming and you're really seriously into Buddhist practice, one of the things you could do is, into all this pain that I'm feeling, I take all sentient beings' pain. Okay, that's great, if you got that mindfulness to do this. Or the suffering that I'm feeling is very similar to the suffering that all beings are suffering. And really, if you look at all beings who are in relationships, it comes down to feeling unloved when there's pain, usually, feeling terribly unloved. So you could do that if you had some time and you wanted to. But the other thing that's important and really can contribute to a lot of compassion, it's a kind of a different view of compassion. But if I turn to Anne and say, you came late and I felt utterly unloved, I'm actually being compassionate to her because I'm giving her a chance to say something and address it in a way that's collegial. I'm not saying, I could never rely on you, you're intolerably unreliable, you're a liar. I just can't believe the kind of person you are. I mean, that's how fights go, come on. We know that. But if I say, I felt unloved and it was so painful, it's an invitation for her to repair. And Anne used the word repair, and actually in modern psychotherapy and even parenting, parents of infants are in tune with their infants 30% of the time. This is moms especially. 70% of the time is devoted to repair. 70% of the time, mom is making up for the fact that she was out of tune with her infant. And so with relationships, if we spend a lot of time repairing, it's okay because you can actually get closer. When I say, I really felt horribly unloved when you came late, I'm revealing something incredibly vulnerable. It gives her an opportunity to say something that's very touching and connecting. Talk about being late. My straight man. I feel unloved when you come late, Robert. You're from Central Casting, you don't know why, but anyway, right on time, talking about being late and how it affects me. Come on down. So, there's a book, if you're interested in this kind of thing, it's called Emotionally Focused Couples Therapy for Dummies. Terrible title, but very, very helpful. But really the core here that is common to modern psychotherapy and modern and Buddhist practice is really developing tolerance and understanding of our own actual experience. And strange to say, the heart of Buddhist practice could be summed up with, if you were to know your experience fully, you would be liberated. And it's that simple and that complicated. So most of us are brought up to really avoid our experience. And we all do this. I do it, for sure. But the more we can be aware of our experience, this is not saying act out every feeling you have. It's basically to know what you're experiencing. It is the path. And it's the path to compassion, it's the path to wisdom, it's the path to improved relationships. So I'll leave it with that. We might take a few questions. Anybody, anything? Don't be bashful. Give Selwa the...
Hang on. Thank you.
Could you tell me how could you practically apply compassion when I'm driving in a traffic jam?
When you're driving?
In a traffic jam.
Traffic jam. So what do you feel?
Angry.
Mm-hmm.
I feel unloved, thank you.
You feel angry?
Yes, because especially here in these four walls, I feel compassion. But as soon as I get into my car and I drive back to my house on the freeway, maybe I'm driving calmer, I'm driving slower, and everybody's pissed at me.
Everybody's pissed at you.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I feel uncomfortable and angry. So
You think,
everything
okay,
that I
so
feel
where do you feel the anger in your body?
in my stomach.
In your stomach. So the way, one of the simplest is to there could be layers to this, but I'll just give you the outer layer, and then, this summer we're going to spend more time on this kind of thing on the Tuesday night classes. But so you're sitting there and your anger is churning. The simplest thing is to recognize, okay, I have this anger and hate, I want to kill all these people, okay? All right, so we're with that. May I take on the anger and hate of all sentient beings into my anger. May it all come into mine, because I've got it anyway. And may I take on all of theirs, and may all sentient beings be free of anger and hate. May mine contain everybody's. Everybody's. And that's a path to practice. There's a lot more to be said about that, as to maybe why and how and what might come up. But you might be surprised at how it affects you. But the real kicker is this mindful capacity to have space to allow your feeling to be there. Most people are at war with their own feelings, so they've got road rage and they've got rage against their road rage, and it becomes just a catch-22. So you've got road rage. Can you have some small corner of your mind that says, oh, I'm experiencing road rage right now. I really hate everybody. I want to kill them all. May my road rage contain the hate and anger and road rage of all beings. And it, in some sense, you might be, to some extent, faking it until you make it. But try faking it until you make it and see just later how it affects you. So I'll tell you a very dirty story, because that's my nature. I've had 3 prostate biopsies because I have a little bit of a condition, but it really does not to concern too much. But in the first one, I think it was, they had somebody, and he was using, I think, an intern or a resident. It wasn't the doctor who I thought. And for those of you who aren't men and aren't young, you wouldn't have experienced this, but they basically stick a thick broomstick up your rear, and it's a little bit like giving birth in reverse. But I'm sitting there and, may I absorb the pain of all sentient beings into my pain, because it's really painful, just as childbirth is painful. And it's sort of like I'm not exactly convinced, may I absorb the pain of all sentient beings into my pain. Well, it's really hurting. But afterwards, my heart was very open. So it may be that in the middle of your rage, you're not going to be feeling that openness. But try it and see how it would. Because actually in Buddhist practice, we talk about during the actual practice and the after effects of practice. And we don't pay enough attention to the after effects of practice, actually. It's very, very important. So there you are in the middle of the hell of Houston traffic and you're hating everybody, but try this, may I take on all the anger and rage of all beings into mine, and I know I'm feeling it. Just can you be aware of your anger and rage, not fight it and think it's a terrible thing, and B, can you make that aspiration? And then just see how it affects you, and we can talk from time to time. Great question. Road rage affects a lot of people. Yeah, question.
All right, so I want to know, is empathy the same thing as compassion? And if so, earlier he said that one can condition themselves to, to react better, or to learn. How does someone learn compassion? Or if they've been taught or trained to be uncompassionate, how can they reverse it?
Well, nothing is imprinted in your brain or body forever. So whatever habits we have, they can change. The brain is always refreshing itself and getting new cells. Neuroscience now talks about brain plasticity. Buddhism talks about impermanence and conditions, and that we're always in dancing with whatever conditions are around us. So maybe we grew up in such a way that we, our hearts are closed, we hate everybody. But yes, just to say, yes, it can change because we're living creatures, and we're always responding and capable of refining what we experience through practice, just doing what Harvey just suggested for Selwa, doing it. Might have one effect the first time, but do it 7 days a week for a couple months. It might shift. So the thing is, very interesting matter between empathy and compassion, and people use this language differently. But there is definitely a difference between anguishing over somebody's anguish, being all upset yourself and sort of resonating with that, And that is not sustainable. That leads to burnout. And Matthew Ricard, in his book Happiness, when he talks about nurses, doctors, caregivers, burnout, he says it's really, in his language, empathy burnout, not compassion burnout. So the difference between the state you're describing, where it's just overwhelmingly painful, and mostly what you're doing is resonating with the pain of the other person, is different from compassion, where you have this courage, this, cœur, the French word heart, which really is related to the Latin courage. The heart has the courage to see it, just as you cultivate the courage to be with your own pain, as Harvey was describing, the pain of feeling unloved. But you don't slide into a depression about it. This is what I feel. This is what's been going on. So similarly, the cultivation of compassion is a capacity to see that there is pain, not deny it, but there's a strength of mind there that's associated with mindfulness that means that you are there about, it's about, what can I do to help? It's no longer lingering in what it feels like, oh, it must hurt so much, oh my gosh, last time I, broke my ankle, it's not that, it's, oh my God, you broke your ankle, I get it. And there's that moment, like the people watching the movies, there's that moment of very strong reactivity, but then it's all about what you can do to help. It's not about your wallowing in that. That make sense?
I have a little philosophical question. I mean, we are all part of a capitalistic society, and I was just wondering how compassion and the capitalistic society, if it is, working together, or if it's maybe a contradiction.
Not necessarily. And I believe there are very different opinions about this. And actually, as I was thinking about what I would talk about, I was thinking about Amartya Kumar Sen, who's an economist at Harvard. And he's really putting forward, he's a 1998 Nobel Prize winner in economic science for his work on welfare economics. And what he's putting out is that, in fact, in order to, so capitalism goes hand in hand with freedom, certain kind of, free market, free, everybody can do whatever they want, buy whatever they want, make whatever they want. So his point is that human freedom actually means that there is the possibility of real development, development for everyone that benefits everyone, that you can't really separate economic development in the way that capitalism sometimes does from the actual benefits that people, all people affected by the capitalistic society experience. So he's working to define, of course he's written a lot, his last name is spelled S-E-N, you can look him up. And he's working to define economic process within a capitalistic context as moving toward freedom in which everybody has what they need. And he has, I'm not up on the sophisticated ins and outs of his philosophy, but if you're a philosopher, he's, or interested. I think it's a very, very important question, because compassion can't just be about our relationships with others when they're late, although that's a good place to start. We're thinking compassion, we have to think globally. We have to think, okay, I'm making a lot of money, but what's that doing to other people? We don't live separate from each other, and that's becoming clearer and clearer and clearer, and we can't afford not to be concerned with how the process of the economy that we're in is affecting everyone. Dalai Lama talks about universal responsibility, which is another way of saying in his language that, we who are well off and have certain freedom and possibilities and time to think things through, we have to think about the big picture. It's morally correct, and it's also, we won't survive if we don't. We won't. Go ahead.
I would add that In my youth, I certainly read Ayn Rand and thought she was delightful.
I didn't know that.
It's like coming late. In Buddhism, there's a lot, and we don't have time tonight, but maybe sometime this summer we'll do it. There's sort of a meditation we do on like a loaf of bread and all of the people involved in constructing one loaf of bread. So there's a lot of talk in Buddhism about interdependence and, you know, how many people did it take to build this space and how many people built the trucks that brought all the materials to build this space. And I think it's good to ask the question that you're asking, and I think it's really good to be sensitive and to consider things like interdependence in the face of things like profit motives and inequality. I mean, those are all good questions to contemplate. But I think one should be very, very sensitive to, you know, there was sort of, in the last presidential campaign, there was a lot of to-do about some comment, but at a certain point, Elizabeth Warren injected the idea that, you know, we all pay for the sidewalks and the streets that the people who are using gas to, or delivering gas to gas stations or cars to car manufacturers. These are publicly owned infrastructures. And to not take into account that we all, you know, if I breathe my carbon dioxide's going out to somewhere, eventually ends up in China, they're taking it in. I think if you can keep in mind interdependence, then I think it's wonderful to think about capitalism and how it sort of intersects with interdependence, but not to have a kind of Newtonian idea of an individual that somehow, that Ayn Rand seems to present, that could somehow exist in some kind of odd philosophical abstraction from a community. That's...
I really like Cornel West's phrase. He says, justice is what love looks like in public. Justice is what love and it's really very important, and I think central to any kind of community aspiration toward compassion, which is really what this Houston Week is about. And Amartya Sen also talks about how, you know, a democracy can move forward with its great ideals and at the same time totally ignore the condition of many people, which is really appalling, living within that context, as if there's some kind of bifurcation there. But it doesn't work that way. A society is a whole dependent arising. And if something is really wrong in some quarter, it's going to come home to roost elsewhere. French Revolution, for example. You know, we can't afford not to be kind. We really can.
Thank you.
A great, great issue, and much more could be said about that by many.
So I know we didn't touch on this a lot today, but personally I've been struggling with how to detach myself from, well, pretty much my obsessive attachment to worldly goods, to love, to life. And I know that's something really heavily focused on in Buddhism. So do you have any pointers as to how to start detaching myself from various things in my life?
Well, first I would ask you, do you have enough that you are attached to sustain you and support you? I mean, everybody needs love, actually. It's okay to feel that and to want it. You know, maybe it doesn't, and to have enough to eat and survival and all of that. It's so that you can relax enough to really be active in the world. So I don't know you, so I don't know where your starting point is, you know. But maybe you need to attach before you can work on the detachment piece of it.
Yeah, I definitely have enough love and all the necessary things that I need in life. But then I start getting attached to Netflix and my boyfriend who lives 3 hours away, and sometimes it gets to be unhealthy to a certain extent.
Yeah. So that's a deep process. We're pretty addicted, all of us, I think, to the internet, Netflix, Facebook, Twitter, all of it. So, I mean, I would really, to say anything very specific, would have to know you a little better. But in general, maybe going along with what Harvey was saying, be kind to yourself. You can't detach within a state of fighting yourself. It really won't work. It won't be real. It won't be sustainable. So it's when Buddhists talk about attachment, they're talking about a long process of cultivation. They're not talking about pick up a book and, okay, from now on all my attachments should be gone. It doesn't work like that. So, maybe the first thing is to be kind to yourself around this, to realize that it's a big project, and to start small. Maybe start with something that you can definitely succeed at. Maybe you spend, 20 hours a week on Netflix. Well, try for 19 hours and 40 minutes. You know what I mean? Really, really. That's part of being kind to yourself. It's wonderful that you have an aspiration. If we were really I would say, well, why do you want to be less attached? You want to avoid the pain of your boyfriend being 3 hours away. That's understandable. But there might be different angles to that particular thing. But whatever you do, and it's in general, a profound aspiration, to see that there's suffering because of some kind of sticky, attached state. That's useful to see, but you have to go slow, and you need some friend, some spiritual guide, or a counselor, or a therapist, or somebody. Usually, everybody needs some help. So be easy on yourself and talk to somebody who can help you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, John, and then maybe we'll stop.
Yeah.
And you were describing someone that was laying there with a local T-shirt, and people rushing up to help them.
Yeah.
And contrasting that with somebody who's in rags and laying there and
Yeah.
kind of in a probably a homeless-looking kind of state.
Right.
I drive by and see guys on corners and they're asking for $1, and all I can do is sit there and say, I feel compassion for you, but I don't want to give you that $1 because it'll just encourage you to be back here tomorrow. And it's, or maybe there's a better way to help him by contributing to the Star of Hope or something else where those funds might be better spent. So I'm curious whether you really can tell whether someone's compassionate or not by what they actually do, because it seems rational if that person is sort of going through a necessary struggle to realize whatever substance they're on or whatever they're doing themselves is not going to work for them. I'm just curious if you can really observe from what someone does whether or not they're compassionate about.
Yeah, I'm not talking about trying to judge from the outside whether someone is compassionate or not. The only thing I was talking about was that when somebody looks like they fit into the community, the people of the community, this was somebody who wasn't asking for money. They were sprawled out with helpless on the ground. They clearly needed help. They hadn't just, they weren't. So, but people didn't help them if they were disheveled looking or didn't look like they belonged. So I was only talking, you've probably never stood out in 90 degrees in the highway, and neither have I, right? Putting a cup out. I know when I go out to eat with some people, sometimes they'll say, I'm going to leave a really good tip because I was a waitress. So there's just something about that sense of connection, that was my only point, that helps us do this. About the guys, I know, it's a tough one. I don't know. I also tend to kind of freeze up. I feel like, well, I ought to give something, but I never have the $1 ready, and it's like too complicated. I'm a little nervous for them to approach the car, and I have all these and then there's the moral thing, like, well, they're just going to buy more liquor. But of course, I don't know what their situation is at all. I just will say what I have noticed is driving around town occasionally with Tibetans. They will usually, they don't worry about it. They just give. Person is asking, they give.
So in 1971, we were studying with Geshe Rupten and one of our earliest teachers, and it was a mud hut in the upper part of Dharamsala, and he was teaching compassion. And so at a certain point, in my kind of wise guy way, I asked him, so what's more compassionate? Is it A person who's going to sit and meditate, cultivating compassion, or somebody who gives somebody driving a truck a cupcake. You know, tell me. And it's a little bit in line with your question. And he said it really depends on the motivation. And it was very, very liberating and helped me because, frankly, in the West we have a kind of a material vision of compassion. And it's within the Judeo-Christian tradition. You know, there are hospitals, there's food. And in Buddhism, it's a little bit more on the motivation. And so, you know, if you can look at a person and you don't necessarily have the dollar or want to give the dollar, but if you're, you know, may this person become a Buddha and become free from all suffering and be liberated, that would be considered a very, very significant wish in the Buddhist community.
Thank you.
I have a question. And I think it's easy to have compassion at the beginning, but if the person keep disappointing you, and also they don't have the inner motivation, they keep pull you down, you know, it's the time you lose your compassion. You know, I
Yeah,
want to see your
so
comment.
another thing that happened early on that sort of shocked me, but it's relevant to what you're asking, Sa. It was an introduction to a Buddhist text written by, I think, Gene Smith, who was like the collector of all Buddhist texts. And he said, in Buddhism, the practitioner sees the hunter killing the deer and has compassion, more compassion for the hunter because of the non-virtuous state of mind that the hunter is cultivating. And there's an idea that if you have non-virtuous states in this life, it contributes to future pain and suffering. So part of what we're doing when we're in a religious and a spiritual context is we're turning things a little bit on their heads. So it's one thing if we're in a relationship with somebody and let's say they're abusing us or not treating us well, we must take care of ourselves. That's good hygiene. At the same time, it doesn't mean we don't understand that at some level they are really messed up, they are really suffering, and if we can find it in ourselves, we wish them all good things. It's very, very hard. Richard Gere got up on 9/11 2 days later in front of a whole bunch of firemen and policemen and tried to talk about compassion for the hijackers of the planes. He was booed off the stage. And in a way, understandably so. It was the wrong time and the wrong place. But really, if we are cultivating a kind of a Buddhist perspective, it's to understand that whoever it is, including Hitler, the worst people, are misguided individuals who are creating untellable misfortune for themselves in the future. But we have compassion for them because we were related to them in the past as helpful individuals, and they have actually the seed of Buddhahood in the future. But it doesn't mean we approve of what they're doing. It doesn't mean we might not try to defend ourselves against what they're doing. But we also can have a mind of compassion for people who are doing miserable things, terrible things. And that's the difference between a spiritual perspective in a way and maybe just a pure psychological perspective. But it's important to recognize it's not saying put up with crappy behavior. You draw boundaries. You say, no, this will not float. Or you have to leave, or I have to leave. And I recognize you are a tormented spirit, and I hope that, you know, in your future as well, and that may you be free from all the suffering that's creating this nonsense in your head and that you're inflicting on me. And yes, that may be easier said than done, but that's our aspiration, to have that kind of capacity, to see that evildoers are worthy of compassion. And why, when we do practice, we actually put in front of us the people who we feel want to harm us. Our parents, our male relatives are on the right, our female relatives are on the left, but the people who we feel are really harmful to us. So, you know, sometimes when I practice, you know, Bin Laden would be in the front of me, or Saddam Hussein, or Adolf Hitler. They'd be right in front of me. But that's a very great challenge, but it's a great question. Thank you. So, do you want to
So
do a
the
concluding
book has
on
gone
the
around, the
book?
Book of Names. So in that context, just as we began with wishing that everyone be free of suffering, that everyone have happiness, we also close with that and dedicate our good conversation about these important things that create some energy of positivity that benefits them, that benefits all of us. May all of us experiment with compassion. Walk around Houston exhaling good wishes to people. Why not?
We're going to do the candle.
Okay.
What?
Okay.
Wendy, maybe?
Yes,
You have somebody else?
No, that's fine. Wendy, would you light the candle? Okay, so this is how we share our...
So we've done
Good.
something virtuous, and in light of that, in Buddhist idea, we share our virtue. It's another sort of compassionate practice. We take whatever good we've had and we share it with all beings. And we're wishing well tonight to all beings in general, and in particular, we do the
prayer first.
prayer first.
Okay.
Okay. Claire, do you want to lead the prayer? This is called the blessing on that sheet.
With all of
You in mind we light this lamp of clarity. May the glow of love, wisdom shine within us everyone, till we all rise forth born in one enlightened mandala.
So tonight we're having in mind Jessica, Emily, Jerry, Richard, Lily, Auntie Jeannie, Uncle Robert, Joanne C., Buddy, and Pat, Coco and the Bardo, Carlos V., Rebecca Aaron and family, Hall, Nadia and family, Jennifer Welsh, Gloria Luong, Zubedia and Shwokat, Plardia, Linda Rollers, Gina, Camilla, Marisol, Leela, Elizabeth, D and K, Helen, Jack Phillips and family, Kale, Jim and Teresa, Job Search, Smokey the Cat and the Bardo, Sharon Fleming, H. Dalai Lama, Adzam Rinpoche, Jetsuma, Thich Nhat Hanh, Ann and Harvey, broadcasters Tom Holder and the Bardo, Hannah, Adam, Herbie, Pat, Petra, Eskimo Gerard, Oral Animals, David Brahan, William Dick, William Stinson, Stephen Sloper, Amy LaChance, Tomon Cunningham, Lorenzo Martinez, Tom Mason, Melvin Joseph, Alessandra, can't get it. Can somebody help me? Alessandra's last name? What is it? Foca? Mocha? Sorry. Frank Midler, Lauren Rosie and Lauren Leach, Louise Cates, Chuck, Peter D., Brady Stewart, Eleanor Day, George and Antonia, Jerry, Jose, Monica Camachos, Gu Ying, Jerry Zongbo, Lockdown Kitten, Menga, Verena, Lucia, Julian, Matthew, Joel, Tim's, Nicholas, Tony, Jan, Norman, Angie, Alana, Santos, Yvonne, Jennifer, Jamie, Carlos, Danya, Karen, Jamie, Andy, Sahid, Nachu, Lan An, Din An, Chinyer Eri, Huang An, Shanya Bulos, Tuang An, Corinne Hale, Puang An, Tang An, Olga Einhorn and the Bardo, Elizabeth Breuer, Gloria and 3-Year Retreat, Judith Molina and the Bardo, Kim Rubin, Hannah, the dog.
We close sending our energy, sound, the sound ah and light from your heart to everyone in this room, everyone everywhere, offering them happiness and serenity. Ah. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, so this summer, June, July, August, first and third Tuesdays, we'll be doing a course on compassion for self, compassion for others. The first and third Tuesdays of April, the third Tuesday of April, and first and third of May, we'll be doing some work on mindfulness, process of dying, and the Heart Sutra and emptiness. These are important topics in meditation. You're all welcome. Please come. We're so happy you could come by. Good to see you all. Thank you, Compassion in Houston, for
May Compassion in
inspiring.
Houston be a long celebrated occasion, year after year. Thank you, Betty, for your leadership there.
and may it grow and
may it
thrive.
grow and thrive and really change Houston. As goes Houston, so goes the country.
everything.
Everything. Yeah, really. Yeah, Steve Kleinberg said right at our meeting that where Houston is now is where the whole country will be by 2040 in terms of totally demographics, richly varied demographics everywhere. So we need to be compassionate to each other, definitely. Yeah. Thupten Jinpa's new book is called A Fearless Heart. He's this Dalai Lama's translator. If you Google Fearless Heart, it's going to be really good. It just came out. Okay. Thank you. Okay.